Welcome, everybody. We're just allowing the roster to populate, and we'll get started momentarily. Thanks for joining us tonight. And just so you're aware, we are recording this presentation. A recording of the presentation will be published in the next few days after tonight, as well as a Google Slide link. There are a lot of resources that we're providing this evening, and we want you to be able to access those links. Mr. Nixon, if you are sharing the presentation, I'm not seeing it on my end. Maybe it's my view, but you can reshare that presentation. I think we can get started. Folks are still filtering in. Okay, thanks for your patience, everybody. I am going to go ahead and get started with our introductions and overview for the evening. You are in the right place at the right time. Hopefully you're comfortable at home and able to track along with us as we talk about what's next for sophomores, tips for parents. And this is presented as a part of our counseling division programming this year. Next slide, Mr. Nixon. So tonight, we're going to provide a brief overview of WHOOP, which is an acronym that describes a process that helps students set goals and attain their wish. And we'll talk about what's a little different about this approach. So we covered that with them starting today, and we'll cover that with them in groups tomorrow and Friday. And then counselors will be meeting individually with their sophomores to talk about next year, the summer, and clarify plans as they prepare for life after high school. Tonight with you guys, we're going to also cover our counselor curriculum, and then we'll end with a Naviance kind of introduction in terms of, again, this is the software that we use to kind of capture and track a student's experience during their high school years, again, as they prepare for life after high school. Our presenters this evening are Ms. Jacqueline Hansen, Mr. Daryl Hobson, Mr. Pete Nixon, and myself, Mr. Thaddeus Sherman. All of us are counselors, and I'll let each person, as they take their portion of the presentation, introduce themselves. Next slide. As I alluded to earlier, I just wanted to reiterate that we met with your students this week and are meeting with them today, tomorrow, and Friday. Again, the WHOOP activity will be covered and kind of shared with you this evening by Character Lab. And then again, we reviewed summer options, career and enrichment opportunities. We also talked about linking their PSAT results to Khan Academy for some test prep as they prepare for the SAT. And I, without any further ado, will hand it over to Miss Jacqueline Hansen. Jacqueline. One caveat, questions will be answered at the end in a Q&A format. If you would like to write them into the chat, you can, and we'll cover them at the end during our Q&A. But for the presentation, we would ask that you would hold those questions and save them until the end. And I think that's it, Jacqueline, all you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Sherman. Mr. Nixon, if you go to the next slide, that would be great. Thanks so much. So welcome everybody. I always feel badly. Our poor sophomores are kind of at the end of the year. We work so much with our seniors and our freshmen at the beginning of the year, and then the juniors as they amp up to practice and look for their post-secondary plans. But I'm really thrilled to be here with you tonight and to have seen the sophomores today during our presentation, because sophomore year is a big year. A lot happens during sophomore year. One of the things we wanted to do with the sophomore group meetings this year is to bring a little bit of social emotional discussion and goal setting and self-control and focusing on what they have control over to help make their goals and their wishes come true, because so much has been out of their control over the last couple of years with COVID. And we feel that it would be good to point that out. And I just wanted to mention that we will be sending out emails at the end this week after this presentation to you and the sophomores with some of what I'm about to talk about, which is what they covered today. And we hope that you're able to use it at home to help them with focusing on their goals and meeting their goals as they move forward. So Character Lab is basically, I don't know if anyone's heard of Angela Duckworth. I'm sure you've heard the word grit. It's been very big in the media over the last 10 years or so, talking about the importance of grit and sticking with things in order to be successful in reaching goals. Well, Angela Duckworth, after talking about grit, started this nonprofit organization called Character Lab. And it is a ton of information that we're able to tap into and try to use to work with our students. She joined up researchers, scientists, educators, students, parents to figure out a way to get the what was being figured out in research to trickle down to the actual classroom and counselors and have it actually be used in a timely manner on the day-to-day education of your kids. Mr. Nixon, you can go to the next slide, please. So her goal was to make it so that the very slow process of education and school-based research to be faster and to actually be usable in a timely manner to make educating kids better. So she created this national consortium with middle school and high schools with some really high-level people throughout the country that are involved in education and research. She created partnerships. And then through Character Lab, there are playbooks and tips and techniques to be able to work with students to help cultivate strengths of heart, mind, and will, which partners with helping them to have higher GPAs, better attendance, more success overall in the educational arena, as well as in their in developing character. Next slide. So one of the things we did today with our students was something called WHOOP. I know that sounds really funny, but it is a practical, accessible, evidence-based activity that helps students find and fulfill their wishes. So it builds self-control. It helps them to focus on not only the wish, like let's say I want to get an A in my biology class, which is the power of positive thinking. What the research over 20 years has shown is just the power of positive thinking is not enough to make those goals come to fruition. What needs to happen is for a person to visualize the obstacle. And that obstacle is something that they have control over. So if I want to get an A on a biology test, and I know that I tend to procrastinate, that's my obstacle. So I'm going to look at that obstacle and say, okay, how is that going to prevent me from reaching my goal? I'm going to write that down. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get around it. And then I'm going to go within the next day directly into an action plan to overcome that obstacle. And what 20 years of research has shown is that it improves students' effort, attendance, homework completion, and GPA. By just adding those two steps, figuring out what the obstacle is and determining a plan to overcome that obstacle, then those goals are more likely to come true. Next slide, please. We're going to show you the video that we showed the students today prior to them actually doing this WHOOP activity. So I encourage you to not get disappointed at the beginning, because a lot of what it says is very different than what we've been taught, what I've been taught for the last 20, 30 years of my life. But it does end up showing you how to make it a worthwhile exercise.
Future with additional steps. Acknowledging the obstacles. We're often told to think positive and rid ourselves of harmful negative self-talk. However, research has shown that positive thinking doesn't work nearly as well as we're told. The more students positively envision themselves getting a job, the fewer job offers they received. The more college students envision successfully starting a romantic relationship, the less likely they got together with their crushee. The more hip replacement surgery patients imagined themselves having a smooth recovery, the less they were able to move their new joint. And the more positive overweight people's fantasies about their success in losing weight was, the fewer pounds they lost. Over 20 years, our research has revealed that just dreaming about a positive future saps energy needed to reach the positive future, predicts low physical and mental health, and predicts diminished well-being and poor personal development. But we can perform better if we combine the pleasurable task of envisioning the desired future with additional steps, acknowledging the obstacles we need to surmount, and planning exactly how we will overcome these obstacles. As an approach to behavior modification, this conscious 4-step procedure, specifying a wish, specifying and imagining the best outcome, specifying and imagining the obstacles within ourselves, and forming a plan, strengthens mental associations in our minds without our awareness, predicting measurable increases in energy, and in turn, better performance. We call this method WHOOP. To test WHOOP, we gave a group of high school students preparing to take an important standardized test a short exercise incorporating WHOOP, while a second group received a placebo. Students exposed to WHOOP completed over 60% more practice questions than participants in the control group. In another study, we gave one group of middle-aged women information about the benefits of a healthy diet, and another group the same information plus WHOOP. For a period of up to 2 years, the women who were taught WHOOP ate more fruits and vegetables than those in the information-only group. Other intervention studies have shown that people who use this method are losing weight, getting better grades, become successful negotiators, and improve their relationships. The magic of WHOOP is that by automating cognition, emotion, and behavior, it triggers people to become motivationally intelligent. It is low cost, easy to use, and can be applied to different life domains and across demographics. By learning and applying WHOOP, you will come away more motivated and skilled than ever to make clear decisions, take action, connect with others, and engage with the world. All from a simple but awakening question: what is it that holds you back from fulfilling your wish? For more information, visit whoopmylife.org.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. So I know that sometimes it can seem a little, it doesn't seem to relate to exactly what all of our students are anxious about nowadays in terms of thinking about post-secondary planning, about finals coming up, about what they're going to do this summer, about building their resume. But what I feel like this little tiny exercise does, if they're able to incorporate it into their goal setting, is it gives them a feeling of control over things that they feel a lot of the times they don't have control over. And so we're hoping as a counseling division that this little exercise will help add to their feelings of wellness, positivity, and help them to be able to get better grades, better attendance, and the rest. There are also a lot of other parts of Character Lab that can be useful. As a quick example, and then I'll be done talking about this Character Lab and WHOOP. Mr. Nixon, if you can clip on these tips. and scroll down a little bit slowly, you'll see that there are these 60-second tips on just a ton of different topics that different students are thinking about, whether it's a matter of coming in, figuring out their academics, figuring out how to deal with a friend and peer pressure, figuring out how to deal with family and the anxiety of holidays, whatever it may be, that these might be helpful tools for them and for you in working with them and for us in working with them. So again, there will be a follow-up email with some of these links for you to look at and maybe use with your children at home. And we will also be using it here at school. Thanks so much for listening to this. And hopefully it will provide you some information to have conversations with your children about what they're learning this week in their group meetings. I'd like to turn over the presentation to Mr. Hobson.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, as Ms. Hanson just said, I'm Daryl Hobson. Mr. Nixon, if you could go to the previous slide. Thank you. We're going to talk about our counselor curriculum today. Before I get into that, I want to talk about to you about some of the things that we discussed with your child this afternoon, this morning. We talked about relationships and how they apply to peers, parents, and teachers. And so I wanted to leave you with a few nuggets in how to support your child through adolescence. As we know, it's been a challenging time over the last 2 years, 2.5 years for us all. And know that in the student presentation, we gave them some nuggets. We're going to share some nuggets with our parents as well. Mr. Nixon, if you could click our tips there and we'll review those with our. So these are tips and they'll be available to you to refer to later if you'd like. But first is always looking for opportunities to model how to manage feelings in a healthy way. I believe this one is more important than ever before, as our students are in many ways starting to socialize more and more after being remote for such a long time and now being reintroduced to high school and socializing with their peers. So it's really important for us to start to manage model how to manage those feelings in a healthy way. Now, this is one that we really talked about with our sophomores today. It's the idea of being an active listener and making eye contact and being able to let the person know, in the student's case, the parents know that they are engaged in the conversation. And for us, I think it's really important for us to acknowledge when that sophomore is talking to you, to make sure that, we make sure that we protect our body language and project positive body language with the student as well, and certainly ask for clarification, because our teens always looking for someone to understand them. So this is a really important point for us. And our third point is when we get angry with our sons or daughters, and we will, I am also a dad of teenagers, remember to deal with the situation at hand and not attack their personality or character. This is a really important way for us to protect their self-concept and make sure that we deal with that action, establish boundaries, and hold them accountable. Certainly be sure that we address the action and not attack their self-concept here. Now, four, encourage cooperation rather than make demands. This is really important. I think this is a part of our students utilizing WHOOP, where our students take ownership and they can develop a plan for whatever the situation is, whether it's how to wash the dishes on a regular basis, when to take out the trash, that important assignment that maybe you got an email about from that teacher. Now, this is a really cool way in which you can partner with that student, but also let them know that you are there with them to take ownership, but you're also going to be there to hold them accountable. Now, our fifth one here is we want to foster that in a sense of internal control. And this is about creating those clear and appropriate boundaries within which our students can take charge. And this is another one where we can allow them to own their own decisions, but also make sure that they understand that we as parents are responsible for them. Sixth, this is really a tough one for us all. Avoid rescuing the child from the natural consequences of their decisions and behavior. It's really hard. It's really tough for us to watch our students scrape their knees, figuratively and literally. But in some cases, this allows us and creates an opportunity for us to partner for future and again to develop those plans for success in the future. And lastly, you're gonna love a child openly with no strings attached. And it's great to administer appropriate praise. And this is really wonderful. And it's our challenge may always be to love our children through their challenges. As my students here often, when they leave the office or when I'm at an advisory classroom, and many of you heard this on the presentation that we did here at school for our students, they'll hear it often, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. And I believe that wholeheartedly, and I want each of my students to believe that as well. So those are a few nuggets for you to take with you. This will be available for you to refer to, because I'm certain, as I do, you'll need to go back from time to time to be reminded. Next slide, please, Mr. Nixon. Now we're going to move into our curriculum planning for our students. And the first piece is that we'll deal with will be the keys to good career and education planning. And we'll share with our students, take those challenging courses in high school. It is really important wherever you're going, whether it be college, whether it be an apprenticeship, those supervisors or hiring agencies want to see solid transcript, solid courses that the students are really challenging themselves. Also, we want to have our students explore as many career options as they can. Think about those career choices and how they'll affect the child's future. Encourage them to dig into Naviance, which you'll hear a little bit more about later in this presentation. There are opportunities for them to explore different careers and certainly their desires, how their skill sets match up with certain careers, as well as a major should they choose to do higher education. It's important. Again, this is another place where we can use that WHOOP, and it keeps coming up again, where we can set career goals and develop an education plan, including classes. Some of the other things that we'll talk about in a moment that support that plan as well. And so lastly, we want to develop that College Board action plan for 11th grade. I won't dig into that checklist, but I'll give you an opportunity and encourage you to look at that checklist a little bit later as you sit down with your student to develop that plan. Next slide, please, Mr. Nixon. Now we'll talk about what your child will experience over their 4 years here in Oak Park River Forest High School in the counseling office here. And freshman year, we'll have those transition meetings in which we got to know your student, what they did, a little bit more about the family. Some cases they were introduced to Naviance. This is gradual for the students, that will continue to reintroduce them to Naviance and all of the things that are available to them through that platform. We develop an individual 4, and sometimes I say 5-year plans, because we're talking about what they'll be doing. We want to lead to what they'll be doing after high school. It includes their course selections for sophomore year as well. And then their sophomore years, we come back with our students doing this year, career exploration and tools for college and career preparation. This is also involving Naviance and more conversations and introducing our students to a vast array of resources. We'll also have our group meetings, which we started today, and we will delve into individual meetings as needed. Most of us have had some individual meetings with your sophomores, and that will continue. And tonight, we're having a parent night where we'll introduce Naviance as well as some other important topics. Next slide, please. So, junior year, many of us are excited about what's next as our students move to upper class years. And what we'll see is this is where our post-secondary planning will come in, and that will be group meetings. Our post-secondary planning will start second semester for our juniors. We'll have a college information night, and our students are really welcome to join and encouraged to join our college callers. And that's where college admissions representatives come to the campus, sometimes in person. It's been more and more virtual to discuss different schools, and sometimes what's new at those schools and those requirements for the school, and students get an opportunity to speak with those representatives and ask the important questions that they may have about a school that they're interested in. Also, junior year, our students will take the PSAT in the fall and the state mandated SAT. And I'll say that again, the state mandated SAT, and that will be in April. It is now a graduation requirement to take the SAT with the school. I just want to reiterate that, with the school. SATs can be taken outside of our school, but the state mandates and that a student takes the SAT at school, scheduled school date, for the actual graduation requirement. We'll also, junior year, take care of those senior year course selections, making sure that all graduation requirements are satisfied, in addition to any recommended or required courses for any school of interest or any program of interest for your student. And we will continue with those individual meetings as needed. And usually students take advantage of the individual meetings a lot more as upper class years, as they become interested in many more things outside of school. And we move into senior year. We finalize those post-secondary plans as our students begin to solidify what they plan to do after high school. And we'll also have those college callers available in senior year as well. We'll have our senior college night, in which we'll talk about the application process and any other resources that students might need for their post-secondary pathway of choice. We'll discuss the application process in those group meetings for our students. And we will talk about that 7th semester transcript, have students evaluate them for accuracy, making sure that they represent them well, whatever their post-secondary pathway is. And we'll continue to have those individual meetings with your student. Next slide, please, Mr. Nixon. As we start to look at some of the different options for our students going into the summer, there are several options. One would be volunteering. And this is a really important one. It does help our students develop a stronger sense of responsibility and civic awareness. Many of you have been talking to your students already about the different issues in the world and how they might address them. So volunteering is a great way to do so, whether it be different agencies in the community, church as well. Also our students in building their resume and preparing for their college entrance, internships, scholarships. It really looks great on those applications to see that really strong volunteer experiences. And what's more, giving does build responsibility and self-esteem and incredible leadership skills. So those are very important for our students. More, and this is something that we talked about not only in WOOP, but we'll continue to talk about them as our students reemerge from the remnants of the pandemic. They get opportunities and volunteer to meet new people, make new friends, and extend their network. So volunteerism is really important, and certainly there are some links within the presentation that you can look at some of the opportunities that may be available to your student. You can do so at a later time as you delve back into the presentation. Next slide, please. What a work. This is wonderful for our students to really look at taking on employment. Building those time management skills as they have to look at a schedule that may be different from what they experience in school. They'll have to balance that work schedule with other commitments, whether they be friends, if they're doing so during school, co-curriculars, and other school activities. It's really, work can really naturally lead to better organization and advanced planning. So it's a really wonderful opportunity. Skills that can be gained here. Not just what they do on the job, but some of those interpersonal or soft skills while they're earning money. And of course, they'll get introduced to the tax man who cometh. So that's really a great opportunity, great learning experience for all of our students. The communication skills that our students will develop, it's really important part of moving into a professional community. Certainly those skills are transferable to a myriad of areas, and it's really important for our students to gain some of those. Really important, and this is one that's certainly transferable to school, and we've talked about their relationship with teachers and communicating with teachers. And that, I think, transfers to supervisors, where our students will learn to communicate with their supervisors about their schedules, any issues that may be a little uncomfortable, those concerns. But our students can do that and learn those skills and become more comfortable becoming really strong self-advocates. The next slide, please. And if you dig into our presentation, we have several links here. You can work with your student and look into different employment opportunities. We'll also have, for those students who are under 16, know that a work permit is required. And so those documents are within the presentation. That application, I'm sorry, is in the application as well. You can review that, and each of the counseling assistants can help you with processing that work permit for your student. Next slide, please. Okay. One of the cool things for whether it be volunteering or enrichment programs or employment, a resume can be utilized. And this is really important. Most of us have seen and used a resume ourselves. And it's really a great opportunity, again, to partner with your students and really an opportunity to help them really brag on themselves. As my pastor says at church, it's a poor dog who won't wag his own tail. So it's really important for our students to learn how to really celebrate their accomplishments. So a resume allows them to do that. You can highlight all of their activities, their volunteer activities, their co-curriculars, different clubs and things that they've done. They can do that in the resume there. And again, they can do this, use that resume with any post-secondary options, whether it be work and higher education as well. Those certainly can support any application. It certainly demonstrates their readiness to handle responsibilities in that post-secondary pathway. Really cool thing about this resume and partnering with your student and Naviance, which we'll hear a little bit more about later, meaning that our students can input all that information about themselves right in Naviance. And Naviance will give them a pre-formatted resume, which they can utilize in any of those areas that we mentioned previously. So we're going to dig into Naviance a little bit more here. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Pete Nixon.
Good evening and welcome again on my behalf and for our team. And thank you to all who are sticking with us. I know it's always a little tricky sometimes to be tracking different speakers, different slides, and different topics. With that, I'm going to turn my attention to the next topic. So Naviance at root is a link for counselors in schools, but at root it started as a transmission vehicle for schools to send transcripts, supplemental materials, teacher and counselor recommendations to colleges. So with that, it allows us to communicate and track what's being sent for colleges, but it's grown much beyond that. It also allows students, as Mr. Hobson said, to create a resume, to do self-personality assessments, which can link them to potential career paths. It allows them to do other assessments about studying environments, various things, and it allows them to do college searches and so forth. So it is about how we can improve their ability with their college and career planning. Now, you may be wondering, well, how do I get at this? What is it? How do I get at this? If you go, first I'm going to show you the process, then I'm going to show you some screenshots. So I'm a visual learner as well. So first the explanation and then what you'll be actually seeing when you go through it. So to visit Naviance, you start at the OPRF homepage, which is oprfhs.org. Under quick links, which is on the right, you'll click Naviance, and then you're going to click the parent or guardian, and I'm new and I need to register. Keep in mind that parents and guardians have a separate portal with different viewing and access features than the student has, and again, then a teacher or a counselor may have as well. So we all have different portals to look through to get at Naviance. Once you do click the I am new, need to register, you enter the registration code, which for parents is the email address that we have on file in Skyward. So if you've ever gotten emails through Skyward, then you've got the right email address from the school's point of view. You just have to remember what it was you provided us so that you can log in, and then you'll follow the prompts as directed. Now, here's what I was showing you, that there will be some screenshots. When you go to Naviance and you click on Naviance, this is what you're going to see. And you're going to click the middle parent or guardian opportunity here. Obviously, you're not, whether or not you're an alum, in this instance, the important piece is that you choose the parent or guardian portal. Part of why that's important is that when we send things to parents specifically, we may use this and you may not get those things if you don't use the right portal. Similarly, once you click and it said, I am new. So in this instance, you're going to log into Naviance. You're going to put, you might be tempted to put an email and a password, but if it's your first time, you need to go to the bottom and click, I'm new and I need to register. And then you're going to put in the email, the parent or guardian email address that is affiliated with your student's account in Skyward Family Access. I'm now going to show you a demonstration of how Naviance can be used as a search engine. It's preliminary, and it's with mindful that sophomores, just having come out of a pandemic, particularly this last year where they've just returned to school full-time on campus this year, that it's a little bit different. So we don't want to overdo the intricacies of what you can do with the search process for college at the sophomore level. But we do want to give you a taste of what lies ahead and some of the facets that are available for families through Naviance. So with that, a colleague of ours has graciously put together something that I don't think I can improve upon. So with my tipping my hat to my colleague, I will go from there. And so I'm going to start now. It's about a 9-minute video.
Welcome back for part 3 of Naviance. This section will focus on college research. So I'm going to go up to colleges at the top, and I'm going to go to the colleges home. So there are a variety of things that you'll see on this college's homepage. There's a Find Your Fit box designed to help students find their best fit college. There's a Research Colleges box. There's an Apply to Colleges box, Scholarships and Money box, Find Virtual College Events, and then college visits down here at the bottom. These are actual college representatives that come to OPRF to talk with students and give them information about specific colleges. We also call them college callers. So I'm going to demonstrate the SuperMatch College Search, which is one of the ways that students can search for good fit colleges in Naviance. So the SuperMatch Search works very similarly to a lot of different college searches in that you are able to choose a variety of criteria: location, academics, admission, student life, diversity, institution characteristics, cost, and so on. And based on the criteria that you select, it's going to then try to match with colleges that meet that criteria. So I'll just do an example so you can see how it works. I'll click on location. Let's say I know I want to stay in the Midwest. I can narrow it down to Midwestern states. If for some reason I don't like Ohio, I could take Ohio out, for example. There's lots of different ways that you can work this. Let's say, I know I want to be in an urban environment, so I'm going to click large city, small city, and then I'm going to go to academics. I'm looking for a bachelor's degree. In this case, if I knew my major, I could type in a particular major to make sure that institutions had that major available. I could go to admission. I could put in my GPA. So if I want to make sure, that my GPA is kind of in line with the colleges that are coming back, I could do that. I could put in my standardized test scores. I could put in the acceptance rate. So if I'm looking for a college that is, very selective and maybe kind of difficult to get into, maybe a reach, I may choose 25% or lower. If I want more, a more open college acceptance rate or easier to get into, perhaps I would click a higher level acceptance rate. I could go to student life. This is everything from clubs to Greek life to ROTC, diversity. I can specify a percentage of minority students. I could narrow things down to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanics serving tribal colleges, LGBTQ plus inclusive, male, female, gender, institution characteristics. This is where I would designate, maybe the size of the school, student success rates, things like that. Cost, so I can limit the cost if I want, right? And then as you'll see, when I scroll here, it automatically puts things into the must-have category. But if something was just nice to have, I could move it over to the nice to have by clicking the arrow. And when I click, or when I scroll down, I'm going to see colleges that actually match the criteria that I put in, and it's going to tell me the percentage match of each college. So Again, like with most things in Naviance, I could click favorite to kind of put this on my favorites list of favorite colleges and do more research at a later time. I could also click directly on a college to get a lot more information about a particular college and university. I want to go back to the college's home for a minute. You can also, if you have a specific college in mind, you could just type in the name. I'm going to put DePaul in, for example. Scroll down, click on DePaul University, and you're going to get that full information page about this particular college or university, which, as you'll see, includes a link to the website, virtual tour potentially, pictures and videos of campus. There's a variety of things you can click on at the top: overview, studies, student life, admissions, costs, and spotlights. And then if you scroll down, you get a lot more information about this college in terms of the net price, graduation rate, acceptance rate, college overlaps, which are other colleges that applicants to DePaul also applied to, and deadlines. And then as you scroll down, you're going to get, again, further information about this particular college. One other thing I wanted to point out on this page, and we point this out to students quite often, if you go to the admissions tab, this is going to be helpful in determining if this is going to be a reach, match, or a safety school for you. A reach school being a school that may be difficult for you to get into or challenging to get into. A match school that kind of aligns with your academic credentials, and a safety school would be a school where you're pretty much guaranteed admission because your academic credentials are higher than their averages. So the first thing you can look at here is the acceptance rate. 67% gives you a good indicator, how easy or difficult it is to get accepted here. And if you scroll down a little bit more, these are actually OPRF students, the number that actually applied, got accepted, and enrolled in each of the years past. And then if you scroll a little further, you get this graph. It's called a scattergram. And this is going to plot individual OPRF students that have applied over the past several years and show you whether or not they got accepted, denied, or waitlisted. A green check mark indicating acceptance, a red X indicating denial, and a circle indicating waitlist. And then you're always going to get this point here, which is going to be the average GPA and SAT score for those students who were accepted, in this case to DePaul. So if I were looking at an actual student instance of Naviance right now, there would also be a blue circle that would plot that students on this graph based on their GPA and SAT score. So if my circle is down here, I know that this is more of a reach school for me. If my circle is up here, it may be more of a safety. If it's really close to this point, then it's probably a match school for me. Okay, so in this case, I've favorited or put DePaul University on my colleges I'm thinking about list. Just want to show you how to access that. So if I go back to colleges, right here, I can click on colleges I'm thinking about, and I can see the list of schools that I've favorited in Naviance, which makes more research on these schools easier and sets things up for me to actually make these active applications at the beginning of my senior year. I can also access that list directly from the Naviance homepage when I log in. Colleges I'm thinking about is right here. Okay. So that is a very brief overview of colleges and one way to search for colleges and do research in Naviance. There are a lot of other things to click on and explore in here. I just wanted to give you kind of the basic college search features.
I'm just going to fix this so we continue. No.
Welcome back from the
Nope.
park.
Bear with me. There we go. So one of the things that we have incorporated and Naviance has on some of its other tabs was the career piece. We, this year, first of all, I want to give Mr. Sponsler, my colleague, great thanks for his presentation, even though he's not here. I want to give him public recognition because he did that, and we are grateful for his help. He's quite helpful with tech and with college pieces. Next, I want to turn to something that was instituted by Dr. Julie Lamb, our director of our education at the high school, a new hire. And she organized something, My Future, My Pathway. We've often realized that many students, the vast majority of our students, apply to colleges. But increasingly, we're finding with the high cost of college, with the pandemic, a series of factors that many students want to have an alternative in case they decide that they want to do something a little bit different, or maybe go to coding school or whatever. With that in mind, Dr. Lamb facilitated a career pathways day, essentially, on April 14th, the day after they took their PSAT as sophomores. They had an opportunity to attend 5 sessions, 5 different topics of their choosing across an array of topics. It could be infotech, health sciences, agricultural science, manufacturing, finance, law enforcement. I, for example, sat in on the FBI we had 4 different panelists, and without getting lost in the weeds, only wanted to mention that the students were enthralled. Of course, many of them want to know specific things because they've been raised with the crime shows on TV. So there are lots of questions. Is it really like this, or CSI that, or whatever it may be? So there was a lot of interaction, and many of the students felt that they got support for alternative pathways beyond just college. And it really opened their mind, even if they do want to attend college. Maybe now, if I went to the FBI session, for example, maybe I want to study criminal justice, whereas before I thought I wanted to study something else. So it really opened up opportunities, and the kids were there was quite a buzz. So also, she talked about the OPRF programs of study and how they link to dual credit and different opportunities, how we partner with our district community college, Triton College, and how they can do career pathways and certificates and things there, long-term careers, internships and work study opportunities, some of which the work study allows students to more affordably attend college or do maybe a co-op program, which is going to college, then getting a job as part of your degree, and then going back and so forth. Kalamazoo in Michigan does that, for example, as does Northeastern in Boston. Summer job opportunities. In an earlier slide, when Mr. Hobson was presenting, you saw several of those where there were opportunities with the Park District or whatever. So there is the opportunity to click here. I'm not going to drag you through all the information. Suffice it to say that when this is available and once the recording has been edited and it's presented, you can go there, or you can go with your student. The students have access to a counselor Google Classroom for their graduating class. And in it, you're going to find a lot of information with a file, for example, with this evening mentioned, and you're going to find various components, some of which we've touched upon, but all manner of tips for parents, for students, for how to do resumes, jobs, and so on. So it's really a much more rich and varied and concrete. We had all these speakers, these many 20, 30, 40, whatever the number was, of different opportunities for people who do these different fields for a living to talk to our students live and in person. And it really was a popular thing. Okay. Now, we're going to turn to questions. I'm just going to say one thing. The Q&A is where you're going to put your questions. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Sherman in one moment so he can help curate this. And we're going to come out of this presentation and in terms of this slideshow, and it'll be more at the Hollywood Squares. We'll be there as a panel to answer questions. And so if you have questions, I'm seeing the numbers going up, please put them in the Q&A, and then they'll be curated, and then we'll answer them for the next bit of time. Again, want to thank you for your patience while you stick with us, And we're now going to go to get out of the slideshow and go to, bear with me while I stop sharing. And here we are. So Mr. Sherman and Ms. Hanson, Mr. Hobson and I are here. We have somebody, one of our tech people has been so kind, Mr. Tang, to join us. So he's kind of hovering in the background. If we get stuck, hopefully we're progressing sufficiently. Mr. Sherman, I hand this off to you. Thank you.
Okay, folks. So we have one question, team. One parent has asked, do IEP accommodations for the SAT impact the reach versus safe versus match school recommendations? So kind of summary, how does a student's IEP accommodation for testing potentially impact their reach, safe, or match school, if at all? Ms. Hanson.
I would just say that typically a college doesn't know if a student has taken the SAT or ACT with accommodations or not. That's not something that they're privy to, and we wouldn't necessarily want them to know that. So it shouldn't affect that at all. They're going to look at the test result, and they're going to look at everything else that's involved in the application. So I would say when you're looking at Naviance and scattergrams, you're still looking at what that average test score is for getting into that particular school, whether or not your child has had accommodations to get their score. So hopefully that explains that for you. Now it's up to the families whether or not they want to let the colleges know. Usually what we recommend is after they're accepted, if they have an IEP or a 504 with accommodations, and how they might get those accommodations once they're on campus.
I would just echo what Ms. Hanson just said and add two things. One is the accommodations for testing, as Ms. Hanson correctly just shared, is not something we disclose. At many colleges, it bears mention that at the moment, almost 70% of colleges, because of the pandemic and related issues, are not even requiring scores. So it's a score consciousness that the family has and a concern. You can elect in many cases whether or not you even want to submit scores. And in terms of other accommodations that might have to do with things, I don't know, Mr. Sherman, if I heard you say just with respect to the testing, or if it's more broadly, there are an array of accommodations that a student would have also that we wouldn't disclose, but that may impact the kinds of schools that are very reading heavy school, if they have a reading issue, or what kinds of approaches that a school might have in its philosophy that might utilize an aspect of a student's accommodation. But again, we wouldn't disclose that. As Ms. Hanson correctly said, we encourage students to do that once they've been accepted.
Thanks, folks. Next question is, where in Skyward can I see my child's current GPA?
Okay, if nobody else jumps in. On our tab, there's on our portal, there's a GPA tab. It is my understanding, and I don't spend a lot of time in the family portal, but my understanding that you can find it a couple places. A current live GPA and grades are in one, I think it's a tab, but another place you can find it is if you look in terms of quarterly, semester, and cumulative overall as well, is in the portfolio. There are each quarter, there are posted the grade reports, each semester are the grade reports, and there will be, I know that we say that I want to make this quick announcement that the sophomore third semester, so keep in mind, cumulative, just to not to do go off tangent too much, but grades at the high school are assessed in terms of GPA. They're recorded on a semesterly basis. So the third semester grades from first semester finishing in December of 2021 would show up on a student's transcript, which will be posted. We've had a little bit of delay with IT, our department, but we are in the process of getting those posted in the portfolio, which has the accumulation of various grade moments, snapshots in time.
Okay, very good. The next couple questions deal with parents of multiple students, so they have siblings. If you already have an account with Naviance for another child, do I need to create a new account for each child? The other question says, Naviance, will it remember my email if I used it for an older sibling, or still say I'm new to Naviance?
I guess I'll jump in, Mr. Nixon. So I'm going to say an answer that with a caveat that if this doesn't work, that I encourage anybody who has questions about Naviance to send an email to Family Access, all one word, at oprfhs.org. So Family Access can answer these questions, but sometimes Naviance changes things and doesn't always let us know. And I think I have the right answer, that you typically will go in and you use the ID of the oldest child, and that should get you into the accounts of the younger children as well. That's how Naviance has done it in the past. Like I said, if you are not able to do that, then I would email Family Access to get instructions on how to get in there. You can reach out to your child's counselor for, if you don't remember the ID number of the person or the other child.
I would build on that only to say I agree with everything that's just been said. Also, Naviance in the last 6 months to a year has changed the password requirements to increase the security. So it's possible if you had a student, an elder sibling who had gone through, you would normally have access, and you still do if you have a current sibling, because Naviance only supports our students who are current students, not alumni. However, because of those password change requirements, it's possible that you may still have access, but you would have to effectively do forgot password, reset your password with the new requirements that are a little bit more complex for security reasons, then you'll again have access. But if you do have any issues, again, in the chat is the, well, actually they can't see the chat, but the Family Access at oprfhs.org, as Ms. Hanson just disclosed.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. The first of which is, if a student doesn't get a 3, 4, or 5 on an AP test, should they submit their score to a college anyway? Or if a college wants a 5, but they score a 3 or 4, similarly, should they submit the 3 or 4?
I can jump in and
I could answer this, but I defer to Mr. Nixon. I think he is the best person.
I think so. I'd say a couple things. Colleges generally assume, but we know that there are a lot of gaps in this assumption, that a student who takes an AP course, and many schools require that a student take the test. But at our school, we don't. So it's possible that if you don't submit a score, they may assume you've not taken the test, or they may assume, the admissions team may assume, that you didn't get the requisite score that you think will strengthen your application. To the earlier, I heard 2 different parts of that question, the 3, 4, or 5. Obviously, different schools have different levels of requirement, and that goes for the international schools as well, because we have increasingly students who want to apply to Great Britain or Europe or Canada or elsewhere. The point I'm trying to make is, my advice, first of all, is you can always ask as a future applicant, the admissions offices themselves, what are your thoughts about, I don't know that I did as well, what are your thoughts about AP tests? Some schools will require them, some schools will not. I know Dartmouth, I think now, may look at them for admissions purposes, but not grant any credit because they want you to take the course there in college. That's a trend that's evolving. So it's to the college specific, but with respect to the 1 or 2, chances are if you have a 1 or 2, you probably wouldn't disclose it. But at the same time, it depends what your story is. These things don't happen without a larger context. There may be a reason why you got a 1 on that exam, but aced all the other ones, or there may be a reason why you got a 3 and you thought you'd do better. There are lots of ways. I would encourage you to contact the admissions office first and have a conversation with the counselor, because if there's a story behind it, you had the flu that day, or God forbid there's a death in the family, something happened that caused for an unusual, you have an A in the course, but you got a 2, then you can always have the counselor also perhaps write about that and explain the larger context for the admissions office.
Right. Just to piggyback on what Mr. Nixon said, keep in mind that most colleges do not use AP exam scores for admission. Most of the time you're submitting those scores as to get credit, to see if they give you credit once you get there. So there are schools now, especially with those that may not, people who might not have taken the SAT and that I've heard that are asking for those scores, but for the most part, AP scores are not used for admission. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I would just add to folks, remember that state schools by law, as of a year or 2 ago, are required to take a 5, 4, or a 3. So the University of Illinois, for instance, they are required to give credit for those courses. Okay, next question says, are you seeing any less emphasis on GPA after the pandemic for admissions?
I would say actually no. My answer would be that, in fact, oh, I'm sorry, I'm hearing feedback. I don't know why. You guys hearing feedback? No?
Yes, Mr. Sherman, can you mute yourself for the moment? That may be a key point.
I can. That's Miss Lynch. Heidi, are you there? I don't know if there's a way to mute.
Pete, you might be up. Mr. Nixon, you might be able to mute everybody from your end. And I'm so sorry. So basically, I've had some conversations. I know we've all had separate conversations with admissions, and there have been some trends. One of those trends is that a lot of schools have gone test optional for the last couple of years. Some are going back to requiring tests. Some are staying test optional. But I have not seen a less emphasis on the GPA. In fact, I would say that there's more emphasis on it because there's less emphasis on the test scores. Having said that, current juniors and seniors, obviously they have grades that were during the pandemic when a lot of us were on remote. And so I do think they're looking at last year differently than they're looking at this year and probably next year. They are definitely taking into consideration that COVID was around, but for our sophomores, that's going to play less of a role because they were freshmen. And so they have this year, next year, and senior year where they will have been in person. And so I do believe it'll be more, it'll be back to the understanding that they would have rebounded since freshman year. That's my perspective and kind of what I've heard from admission counselors.
Okay, two more. Can a parent add a college to the favorites list under colleges I'm thinking about?
I believe that historically they couldn't, but I believe that recently they can. And we're going to work on muting the other Thaddeus Sherman there. Or
Mr. Sherman, you're in here twice. And
Yep,
I'm wondering if
just to clarify, that's Miss Lynch, and I've reached out to her to ask her to mute and go off camera, but I've yet to get a response. So Pete, if you're able to mute the other Thaddeus Sherman, you can.
I'm going to just.
I will try. Anyway, continue with your next question. I'll work on that.
I'm just going to say, Mr. Hobson, I want to tell happy birthday to your daughter, and we will take it from here in answering questions. Have a wonderful rest of your night with your family.
Happy birthday to your 18-year-old.
Thank you so much. Your 18-year-old. Thank you very much. Enjoy, everyone. Feel free to reach out to me whenever you need to. And I tell you all, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Woohoo!
Good night.
Okay, last question, guys. Does Naviance support non-academic style career paths as well, specifically in the arts, for instance? Particular interest concerns perhaps scholarships or grants or international programs.
Yes, so Naviance does use how they come up with the, as I may have mentioned, if a student does some of the assessments like the Myers-Briggs assessment, they will then generate, the program from Naviance will generate the career paths. And then they'll say, are you more interested in the arts? Are you more interested in management? They'll let the student sort of self-select. It can be quite a bit of information to wade through, but there are opportunities. And then they can go from there. They also link, if the student's willing to answer some more questions, it's a full-bodied assessment and then follow-up, but they can also fine-tune what kinds of colleges they want, what kinds of programs. So yes, having said that, in terms of the scholarship piece, there's a national database, I believe, that they have generated as well. That's really a conversation I would encourage you to work with our art department on as well. We have a lot of college colors, as a side note, for students who are interested in careers in the arts, and a lot of them are hosted, the college colors, by the experts in our art faculty, and they can guide you as well for portfolios or graphic design or whatever.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for your attention and for your follow-ship as we presented this evening. Have a good night, and we wish you
Take good care, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. And this will be recorded in case anyone asks you. They will be able to access it soon on our website. Thanks so much.
Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for staying with us, and have a good evening.